Good morning, dear students. Today we are in the last topic of our lesson microorganism. Our topic today is denitrification and nitrogen cycle. Before we enter into the topic, that is denitrification and nitrogen cycle, let us have a recap of the last lesson. Even this denitrification and nitrogen cycle are the functioning of microorganisms. That is why we are going to learn about them in our topic today. So the last topic we have learned is nitrogen fixing. Nitrogen fixing is the nitrogen in the air being converted into nitrogenous compound in the soil. We learned that nitrogen fixing in the nature is two types, that is biological nitrogen fixing and atmospheric nitrogen fixing. The biological nitrogen fixing are two types, that is nitrogen fixing by rhizobium bacteria and blue-green algae and ammonification. We know that ammonification is the dead plants and animals and the faces or excreta of animals forms nitrogenous waste, and this nitrogenous waste is decayed and decomposed by decomposing bacteria, and the nitrogenous waste is converted into ammonia. This is called ammonification. So these two are biological nitrogen fixing. Then the second type of nitrogen fixing in the nature, that is atmospheric nitrogen fixing during lightning. So the nitrogen fixing by rhizobium bacteria. The nitrogen from the atmosphere N2 is converted into ammonia NH3 by rhizobium bacteria. This ammonia or NH3 is converted into nitric oxide and nitrites and nitrates by nitrifying bacteria. That is called nitrification. Then we learned about ammonification, the excreta of animals, dead animals and plants form nitrogenous waste. They are decomposed by decomposing bacteria and convert them into ammonia NH3. This ammonia is nitrified by nitrifying bacteria and convert them into nitrites and nitrates. These nitrates and nitrites and ammonia are absorbed by plants into their body and they convert them into protein, and this protein is used by plants for their growth and repair. And then when the animals eat these plants, the animals also get protein from this food they have eaten, that is the plants they have eaten. So we learned about nitrogen fixing, atmospheric nitrogen fixing. During lightning, the nitrogen under high temperature react with oxygen and forms compounds of nitrogen and oxygen, that is nitrous oxide N2O, nitric oxide NO, and nitrogen peroxide, that is NO2 minus. So this nitrogen oxide, nitric oxide and nitrogen peroxide react with rainwater H2O and form nitric acid. This nitric acid is dilute nitric acid because in the rainwater the water's amount is much higher and acid is amount of acid is very little only. So it is not a very strong acid. The strong acid is concentrated acid. Concentrated means the amount of water is very less. So since the rainwater is there, the amount of rainwater is more and the amount of nitric acid is very little. So this nitric acid, which is mixed with the rainwater, falls into the soil. Thus the nitric acid reaches the soil and react with the alkali in the soil and form nitrates. And these nitrates are can be directly absorbed by the plants. This is nitrogen fixing. Now denitrification. Denitrification is nothing but converting the nitrogen in the plants and animal back again into nitrogen in the atmosphere is called denitrification. When we learned about ammonification, we had learned that the excreta of the animals and dead animals and plants are decomposed by decomposing bacteria and convert them into ammonia. But they are not these are called nitrogenous waste. The animal excreta, dead animals, plants are called nitrogenous waste. This nitrogenous waste, from nitrogenous waste, not only ammonia is converted or formed, also nitrogen gas is released by denitrifying bacteria during decomposition of this nitrogenous waste. So denitrification, during denitrification, nitrates is converted into nitrogen. So you can see in this picture also the plants and animals are dead and undecomposed by decomposing bacteria, and through the nitrification of nitrogenous waste, nitrogen from the nitrogenous waste, the nitrogen is released back into the atmosphere. It's called denitrification. Here are denitrifying bacteria we can see, and we can see nitrogenous waste is in this bin. So the denitrifying bacteria are going to convert the nitrates into atmospheric nitrogen. So here the nitrogen gas is being released from nitrogenous waste. See, the nitrogen gas is escaped from the nitrogenous waste because of the actions of denitrifying or decomposing bacteria. Thus, the nitrogen gas reaches back again in the atmosphere. So this is denitrifying. Now we can see denitrification in the diagrammatic form. In the nitrification, we have seen the nitrogen from the atmosphere reached in the soil. So the nitrogen forms nitrogenous compound in the soil, and this nitrogenous compound is absorbed by plants, and they are converted into protein in the plant body. So this protein become part of the plant body. Thus the nitrogen also become part of the plant body. The protein is used for the growth and repair of the plant. When the animals eat the plants, the animals get the proteins from the plants. So thus the nitrogen reaches the animal body. When animals excrete or animals and plants die, they form the nitrogenous waste. This nitrogenous waste is decomposed by the decomposing bacteria, and there the nitrogenous waste is converted into ammonia and nitrogen gas. So the nitrogen gas is released into the air. So the nitrogen gas is produced by denitrifying bacteria from nitrogenous waste that is released into the atmosphere and reaches back to the atmosphere. This is called denitrification. So we can see this in pictorial form. The nitrogenous compound in the soil is absorbed by the plants. So nitrogen reaches in the plants in the form of protein. So the plants are eaten by animals. So protein reaches the animal's body. So thus nitrogen reaches the animal's body. So the protein helps the plants and animals to grow and repair the damages in their body. Then we learned that when the animals excrete or the plants and animals die, they form nitrogenous waste. This nitrogenous waste is converted into ammonia by decomposing bacteria, and also nitrogen gas is also released from this nitrogenous waste by denitrifying bacteria. So this nitrogen which is released from the nitrogenous waste is released back into the atmosphere. Thus nitrogen once again reaches back to the atmosphere and become part of the gases in the atmosphere, and therefore because of this cycle and the nitrogen reaches back in the atmosphere after at the end of the nitrogen cycle, therefore the amount of nitrogen in the atmosphere does not change. Nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen cycle is nothing but if we put together nitrogen fixing and denitrification, it becomes nitrogen cycle. That is, the atmospheric nitrogen reaches the soil and forms the nitrogenous compound. This nitrogenous compound reaches the plant body in the form of protein, and from plant body it reaches the animal body, and from animal body and plant body, when it decomposes or during excretion, forms this nitrogenous compound is formed into nitrogenous waste. This nitrogenous waste is decomposed by decomposing or denitrifying bacteria, and the nitrogen gas is released. Thus the nitrogen gas escape into the atmosphere and become part of the atmosphere. This keep on continuing. The nitrogen again is become part of the soil and form the nitrogenous compound, and the process goes on. This is called a nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen cycle. The atmospheric nitrogen is converted into nitrogenous compounds to form the building blocks of life, that is, protein, DNA, and RNA. Thus, nitrogen reaches the plant and animal body. This nitrogenous compound present in the excreta and dead plant and animal remainings are broken down and nitrogen gas is released back into the atmosphere. This process is known as nitrogen cycle. Thus, the percentage of nitrogen in the atmosphere remains more or less constant. So here is nitrogen cycle. You can see very clearly the nitrogen in the atmosphere through nitrogen fixing, part of the nitrogenous compound in the soil, and through ammonification, the nitrogenous compound, the nitrogen become ammonia. Then through nitrification, nitrogen becomes nitrites and nitrates, and through denitrification, the nitrogen is released from nitrogenous compounds and become part of the nitrogen in the atmosphere. So the nitrogen cycle is completed. So this is in pictorial form, the nitrogen cycle. The nitrogen in the atmosphere is become nitrogenous compound by nitrogen fixing bacteria and blue-green algae. They form ammonia. Then the nitrifying bacteria make them into nitrates and nitrates. Thus, they become the compounds in the soil. These nitrogenous compounds are absorbed by plants, and the plants makes nitrogen part of the protein in their body. This protein helps the plants to grow and to do repairing of their wounds and hurts. Then when the animals eat the plants, the protein reaches the animal body. Thus, the nitrogen becomes part of the animal body. And during the excretion of animals, and when plants and animals are dead, they form the nitrogenous waste, that is waste containing nitrogen. During decomposition, by decomposing bacteria, ammonia is released. This ammonia is again absorbed by plants, converted in nitrites and nitrates, and absorbed by the plants and again eaten by the animals. Nitrogen reaches the animals, then they become part of the nitrogenous waste, then reaches the atmosphere. So this cycle goes on. Then we see this through nitrogen fixing, the nitrogenous waste is decomposed. The denitrifying bacteria release nitrogen gas also besides ammonia. This nitrogen gas is released into the atmosphere and become part of the atmosphere. So here I forgot to say about, so the cycle is completed. So I forgot to say about the nitrogen fixing through lightening. So this is nitrogen fixing by lightening. This is in pictorial form. Nitrogen in the atmosphere. the nitrogen in the atmosphere during lightning convert into nitrates, become part of the soil. Also, the rhizobium bacteria and nitrifying bacteria fixes the nitrogen. Thus, the nitrogen as compound is formed in the soil. So, this is absorbed by plants. So, they become part of the they are absorbed by plants and become part of the plant body as protein. Then animals eat the plants. Then the protein become part of the animal body. The nitrogen also become part of the animal body. So when the animals excrete or the plants and animals die, they form the nitrogenous waste. This nitrogenous waste is decomposed by decomposing bacteria and convert them into ammonia. So ammonia again is converted into nitrites and nitrates by nitrifying bacteria, and then plant absorbs them, and then animal eat the plants, and then again they become nitrogenous compound waste and ammonia is released. This cycle goes on. Then we also learned the denitrifying bacteria convert from the nitrogenous release from the nitrogenous waste. Besides ammonia, also nitrogen gas. So nitrogen being the gas is escapes into the atmosphere and become part of the gas in the atmosphere. This is nitrogen cycle.